If you look at the flight line of any major private terminal from Teterboro to Dubai, the hierarchy is clear. The G650 is the gold standard. The G700 is the new throne. The G800 is the horizon. But if you try to trace the lineage of the world's most prestigious aerospace brand, the math stops making sense. Where is the G100 today? Where is the G300? Why did the G3 vanish from the history books? And why did Gulfstream skip an entire generation of numbers to reach the G650? The history of Gulfstream isn't a straight line of engineering progress. It is a 60-year game of corporate shell moves, aggressive rebranding of foreign technology, and psychological warfare against their rivals in Montreal. This is the investigation into the ghost models, the planes Gulfstream wants you to forget, and the strategic reason why the numbers don't add up. In 1958, Gulfstream wasn't a brand. It only had a single model produced by Grumman Aircraft Engineering, the G1, which was a twin turboprop anomaly. At a time when executive travel meant cramped cabins and converted military bombers, the G1 offered stand-up headroom. It was the birth of the jet set, without the actual jet, but the strategic pivot occurred in 1966 with the G2. This was the moment the DNA of the brand was encoded. They took the Spey engines from a Rolls-Royce and married them to a clean sheet swept-wing design. It was the first purpose-built business jet. For 20 years, the evolution was linear. The G3 added the iconic winglets. The G4 introduced the glass cockpit and the legendary Tay 611-8 engines. By the late 1980s, the path was clear: G1, 2, 3, 4, a logical, mathematical ascent. Then the logic broke. In the late 90s, Gulfstream faced a terminal problem. Innovation is expensive. Engineering a clean sheet aircraft takes a decade and billions in capital, but the market was moving faster than the factory in Savannah. Their rivals at Bombardier and Cessna were encroaching on the mid-size market, a segment where Gulfstream had zero presence. Instead of building, Gulfstream decided to steal. In 2001, General Dynamics, Gulfstream's parent company, performed a corporate identity heist. They acquired Galaxy Aerospace from Israel Aerospace Industries, IAI. Overnight, two aircraft that had nothing to do with Savannah's engineering lineage were painted with the iconic logo. The IAI Astra SPX was rebranded as the Gulfstream G100. The IAI Galaxy was rebranded as the Gulfstream G200. This was a fundamental engineering compromise. To the untrained eye, they were Gulfstreams. To a mechanic, they were orphans. The G100 was a narrow-body, high-speed pencil jet that shared zero parts with its larger siblings. The G200 used a different fuselage philosophy entirely. In reality, Gulfstream just bought a shortcut. They filled the numerical gaps in their lineup, the 100 and 200, to create the illusion of a full-suite manufacturer. But the industry saw through the white labeling. These weren't real Gulfstreams. They were Israeli jets in a Savannah Tuxedo. The G100 and G150 were eventually killed off, and the G200 evolved into the G280, a plane that remains a stepchild in the fleet, still manufactured in Tel Aviv. To understand the broken timeline, you have to look at the G400 and G500, not as aircraft, but as a masterpiece of market cannibalization. In 2002, Gulfstream faced a branding nightmare. They had the G4/SP and the G5, arguably the two most successful business jets in history. But the competition was evolving. Bombardier's Global Express and the burgeoning Challenger line were squeezing Savannah from both ends. Gulfstream's response wasn't a breakthrough in aerodynamics, it was a breakthrough in nomenclature deception. They announced a new fleet, but the reality was a shell game. The legendary G4/SP was renamed the G400. It was the exact same airframe, the same Rolls-Royce Tay 611-8 engines, and the same 4,225-mile range. But by slapping a 400 on the tail, they created the illusion of a new product cycle. Simultaneously, they launched the G300, which was essentially a G400 with a software-locked fuel capacity.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to give you the newest Gulfstream to join this distinguished fleet, the new Gulfstream G300.
It was a cynical move to capture a lower price point without spending a dime on a new assembly line. It was the first ghost model, a plane that existed solely to protect the profit margins of the flagship. But the real strategic pivot occurred with the G500 and G550. This is where the timeline truly fractures. If you bought a G550 in 2004, you were buying the king of the skies, 6,750 nautical miles of range. If you bought the G500, you were buying a plane that looked identical but was engineering compromised. The original G500 was a G550 with reduced fuel tanks and a stripped-back avionics suite. It was a light version of a heavy hitter designed to fulfill a specific corporate mandate: provide the prestige of a large cabin Gulfstream without the unnecessary expense of trans-Pacific range. However, Gulfstream's numerical warfare didn't stop there. Years later, they effectively erased these models from the memory of the market. In 2014, they announced a new G500 and a new G600. This created a historical paradox. If you're a broker today, you have to specify, are we talking about the legacy G500, the short-range G5 derivative, or the clean-sheet G500, the fly-by-wire powerhouse with the Pratt & Whitney PW800 engines? Gulfstream intentionally recycled these numbers to bury their older, less efficient designs. By overwriting the G500 designation, they performed a corporate lobotomy on the used aircraft market. They wanted the world to forget the compromised G500 of the 2000s and focus on the high-tech G500 of the 2020s. This numerical recycling is a psychological weapon. It ensures that the brand always feels current, even when it's cannibalizing its own history. The G400 of today is a 4,200-mile powerhouse. The G400 of 20 years ago is a fossil. By using the same name, Gulfstream forces the market to equate the two, artificially inflating the perceived value of the lineage while hiding the missing link models that didn't survive the evolution. It is an exercise in identity erasure. Why does a billionaire care if it's a G700 or a G800? To answer this question, you need to understand the tax shield math. When the G700 was rolled out, it was marketed as a mobile office under the 51% rule. To qualify for accelerated depreciation, a mechanism that allows a corporation to write off the entire $75 million purchase price in a single year, the aircraft must be used for business purposes more than 50% of the time. Gulfstream's engineering of the G700 interior is a direct response to this tax code. The inclusion of circadian lighting and low cabin altitude isn't for comfort, it's for executive readiness. By proving that an executive can arrive in Tokyo and go straight to a meeting without jet lag recovery time, Gulfstream builds the legal framework for that aircraft to be classified as a 100% business asset. The G700 is a personal tax shield wrapped in 18 panoramic windows. The missing numbers in the lineup are often discarded because they don't fit the tax-efficient office in the sky narrative. If a model doesn't have the range to justify a global business footprint, it doesn't move the needle for the CFOs who actually sign the checks. And now we arrive at the G800, the newest ghost in the hangar. To the uninitiated, the progression from G700 to G800 implies growth, a logical expansion of cabin volume and physical presence. But in the rarefied air of Savannah's Flight Test Center, the G800 represents a radical departure from linear logic. It is a strategic hybrid, an aircraft that shouldn't exist according to traditional marketing rules. If you look at the specs, the G800 is a glaring anomaly. It bears a higher number than the G700, yet its fuselage is 10 feet shorter. This is the Frankenstein of the skies, a meticulously engineered chimera. Gulfstream has taken the fuselage of the legendary G650ER and grafted it onto the advanced high-speed wing and the massive Rolls-Royce Pearl 700 engines of the G700. In any other industry, a higher number signifies more. In Gulfstream's world, the numbers have officially decoupled from physical scale and attached themselves to performance extremes. The G800 was designed with a singular, ruthless objective to reclaim the title of the longest-range business jet in history. By shortening the fuselage, Gulfstream reduced the weight and the parasitic drag, allowing the massive fuel capacity of the G700 series wing to be utilized for distance rather than lifting a heavy multi-living area cabin. While the G700 is designed for the CEO, who wants a grand dining room and a master suite. The G800 is for the sovereign wealth fund manager who needs to get from Hong Kong to New York against the most brutal winter headwinds without a fuel stop compromise. The G800 is a direct response to Bombardier's global 7,500 and 8,000. It is a declaration of logistical supremacy. By flying 8,000 nautical miles at Mach 0.85, it creates a time-space compression that its predecessors couldn't match. But there is a cold hard truth hidden in its rollout. The G800 effectively kills the G650ER, the very plane that defined the brand for a decade. It is a cannibalistic succession. Gulfstream is forcing its most loyal customers to abandon the 650 platform by offering a plane that looks nearly identical, but operates on a completely different plane of physics. This is the ultimate evolution of the numerical shell game. By labeling a smaller aircraft with a larger number, Gulfstream has rewritten the rules of status. In the private jet terminal, the G800 owner isn't signaling that they have the biggest cabin. They are signaling that they have the most global reach. It is the first time a ghost model hasn't been used to hide a weakness, but to weaponize a capability. The numbers G1 through G800 are no longer a timeline, they are a matrix of utility. G280, the entry-level outsourced asset. G400/500, the mid-range commuter. G600/700, the flagship offices. G800, the ultra-long-range weapon. The missing links, the G100s, 300s, and the skipped 600 series, were the casualties of a brand finding its voice. They were the experiments, the rebadged imports, and the strategic lies told to stay ahead of the competition. At the end of the day, Gulfstream wants you to believe the lineage is a perfect, unbroken climb to the edge of space. Although the reality is far more interesting. The missing Gulfstreams aren't lost. They are buried in the fine print of acquisition deals and tax loopholes. In the world of the 0.1%, the number on the tail goes beyond just a model. It's a statement of how much of the world and the law you've managed to conquer.